I am the curriculum and elementary curriculum and PD leader in community. And I am also the instructional coach at Keystone Elementary. And convinced, coerced a couple of my colleagues to join me today. I'll let them introduce themselves.
I'm Bridget Spear. I am the K-6 librarian and tag teacher and technology special teacher.
I'm Kim Fisher. I'm a kindergarten teacher. And because she's in here right now, she needs to introduce herself in the back of the room.
I'm Amber Bridge. I'm a digital learning consultant at Great Wood AA.
And Amber has kind of held our hand through this whole process. So she didn't include that in her introduction there, but that's definitely credit that she needs and deserves. She has helped us work through a lot of the things that we're going to share with you today. That's our contact information. The link to the slides is at the top, and I will share this so that way there's access to these on the iTech page as well. Right now they're not on there, but they will be by the end of the day. To get started, I just wanted to share a video with you made by some of our students and Amber that we worked through this summer, for last school year actually.
I'm not creative. Oh wait, yeah. I don't have any supplies. I can make it out of a cardboard box. I'm not good at this. Oh my gosh, I don't have time. Taking time is important. You have to prepare for the test. I'll practice at home. No one showed me how. I don't have any ideas. I have lots of ideas. I can figure it out. I'm not an artist. I'm not an artist. I'm a great artist.
And that is totally his personality. I am really good at this, and I can. So that video is put in there just to give you a glimpse of some of the work that we've tried to do, creating that mindset that a maker might have at Benton Community. So Makerspace has been a buzzword for, I don't know, the last handful of years in Iowa and across the nation. And we've tried to work through different things to bring Makerspace to Benton Community and learn quickly that it's not just a physical place that we needed to set up in our buildings, but it was a mindset that we needed to make sure the people in our buildings had. Not just the adults, but the kids and the community as well. So today we're going to talk about some things that worked for us and some things that might not have worked for us so well. Kim and Bridget are going to share some of their favorite tools, how they find time and all of those things that I know people wonder when they talk about Makerspace. Again, I think the biggest thing that we're going to talk about today is Makerspace is not a place, it is a mindset. Yes, we have designated space for some of our maker tools, but it's not a place, it's a mindset. So today we're going to talk about that, and some of our next steps are where we're headed with Makerspaces at Benton Community. So a glimpse at where we've been, just a timeline of our journey. Back in the fall of 2014, I think we read about Makerspace on Twitter and thought, okay, what is this place called a Makerspace? And the way that kind of started is Kim and I and a few of our colleagues were really active on Iowa Ed Chat, Sunday nights at 8 o'clock. And so on Twitter we were reading about Makerspace and what is Makerspace and what does Makerspace mean? And our superintendent, Gary Zittigren, Iowa Superintendent of the Year, he was also on Twitter on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock, and we knew that about him. So we decided that we would play a little game of manipulation, really is what it was, to convince our superintendent that this is something that we needed to consider pursuing at Benton. So we were really intentional about tweeting things about Makerspace, tweeting articles, links, things like that about Makerspace on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock, and being really explicit and tweeting them at Gary Zittigren. And that picked up some steam, and we decided that we would take it to him as far as like a pitch. So Gary, can you have a little bit of our time? Can we talk to you about this thing that we've been tweeting at you about for the last few months? And he said, sure, ladies, come on in. So we sat down and prepared this big presentation, and in the midst of all of this, our district was, like many, having to do some budget cuts. And we were so deep that we were closing one of our buildings. So we were doing a complete reorganization of our district elementaries. And like I said, closing the building that actually Kim and I worked in. So we knew that going into our sit down with our superintendent, asking for money was not going to be able to be part of the equation. We need to figure out, okay, this is what we think we want to do, but we can't ask you for any money because otherwise it's going to be a big red no. So we sat down with him, we explained, like, this is what we want to do, and just like we expected, he said, that's fine, you can do it, but you have to find your own money for this. We said, Gary, that's fine. As long as you let us move forward, we'll find our own money. And we did. So in the spring of 2015, we started to pursue how do we get a makerspace in our building. And again, back in what I would say 2015, push back at me, Kim, but we were still stuck on makerspace is this place in our building. And we need to have this place in our building so we can fill it with cool toys, cool tech things. That's what we needed all that money for. And I think what we quickly realized in the fall of 2015 is that it didn't take us much money, and it wasn't about the tech tools, it was about the mindset. It wasn't about the place that it was housed in our building. So we, in the spring of 2015, applied for a grant. All of the state, all of the counties in the state have the opportunity to apply for lottery dollars, a grant that's usually hosted by a grant foundation. There's one in every county. Every county in Iowa gets the same amount of lottery dollars, and then it usually gets put into a different fund. And schools, nonprofits, they can apply for these lottery dollars. So we applied for a grant. I think we shot big. The max was $10,000, so we asked for $10,000. We didn't know exactly how we were going to get it. We knew it. I don't know if we really knew how we were going to spend $10,000 right at that time, but we got 3. We were really excited to get 3. And we were really lucky to have a supportive PTO and all the other places or pieces that pitched in for that funding piece because, again, we knew that that was a hurdle that we did not want to have in our way. That was a barrier we wanted to remove. So we got that removed and we moved to buildings, and it turns out that when teachers are forced to move, they purge a lot of stuff. And that was a great time for us to start a makerspace in our building because Kim had googly eyes for 10 years stored in one cupboard in her classroom.
That's my fault. I moved into a room that the lady taught kindergarten her entire career, and she really liked googly eyes, so had a lot to study.
But I think that that was a time where the space piece started shifting to the mindset, right? Because it wasn't about where we were going to put the googly eyes or who had the googly eyes. It was, okay, what does this mean for kids? If we all contribute all of our things to this makerspace, how can that affect our kids, and what are we going to do with it? So in the fall of 2015, we opened our first makerspace at Keystone Elementary. We started with some community buy-in. We host like a parent egg camp at the beginning of every year. And we made sure that the makerspace was ready, it got ready that day, for that parent egg camp. So parents could choose to come into the makerspace and learn about the tools that were in the makerspace, what the makerspace was all about, even before their students had really gotten the opportunity. Because again, the Amazon delivery arrived at maybe 3 o'clock, and the session for parents started at 6. So we were all in. Parents got to play with the things that were in the makerspace. We got to have great conversation about how the community can contribute to our makerspace. And it kind of took off at Keystone Elementary. Teachers were able to use the makerspace at their free will. I'll let Kim kind of talk about how that's transitioned. since the fall of 2015 as far as people using the Makerspace. In the 15-16 school year, we did some more grant writing and we opened up spaces at our Atkins and Norway buildings. And I didn't really explain before, Keystone and Atkins are PK3 centers and Norway's now a 4-6 center. So we have makerspaces in all 3 of our elementaries throughout the district. In 2016 and 17, this last school year, like I said, the Makerspace movement continued to push that mindset and those resources into Atkins Elementary, and Atkins Elementary have we started what we call Maker Mentors. And I don't know if you have a session planned for 3 o'clock tomorrow, but if you're here and you don't have a session that you're already planning on, or even if you have a session you're already planning on, I would highly recommend the Maker Mentor session at 3 o'clock tomorrow. There are going to be 3 kids here totally presenting and describing what it means to be a student leader in their Makerspace or be a student leader with the Maker mindset. But that was a catalyst for change at Benton Community because
That's
now
120.
120, yes.
120 tomorrow.
Thank
I'll show
you.
it. Yeah, they'll be gone.
That was a catalyst for change for the Maker mindset at Benton Community. So that helped teachers and students alike see that their role in that Maker mindset and how they can continue to adopt that. And this school year, what we're moving towards is more Maker Mentors. We're going to spread that Maker Mentor mentality throughout all of our elementary centers, and Bridget can talk about that in a little bit. We're going to have more conversation about the Maker Cycle. I feel like we've kind of layered in different components of Makerspace and what that consists of. We haven't pushed that Maker Cycle, that plan, do, connect, or plan, do, reflect cycle as much. That we created a few years ago. Teachers are coming to that on their own, and we have high hopes for a community engagement piece with the Maker Night. So here are our physical spaces, and these pictures are actually even a little bit dated. On the far left, that's what our space looks like at Keystone Elementary. Again, Keystone Elementary is a PK3 center. That space is part of the library. In the middle picture, that's a space, or a picture of the old space at Atkins Elementary. That used to be a former classroom. Well, this year we had so many kinders that we had to add another section. So we no longer have an extra classroom. And now that is also part of the library. And this picture down here is a picture of some of the tools in the Norway space. So as you can see, none of our spaces look the same. A lot of our spaces don't have the same tools accessible for kids because we're all part of the same district, so we can borrow and steal from each other. Not all tools need to be in every space. Because it's not about the tool, it's about the mindset. So again, just to briefly go over some of those money pieces, we do some building fundraising. We put Makerspace items, consumables that we know we're going to go through a lot of on our school supply list. So marshmallows, we decided to take off baggies for a while. We have enough baggies to last us for a really long time. Marshmallows are cheaper than baggies. So we put marshmallows on there, toothpicks, tape, hot glue sticks, all of those things that we need more of or that kids are going through really quickly on our school supply list. Have kindergarten boys bring one item, kindergarten girls bring another. Not only does that fill our need, but it also gets families more connected to our space. Well, why are we taking marshmallows to school? And how are you going to use marshmallows at school? Why are we taking toothpicks? Some of those consumable pieces that they can contribute. Again, the Community Foundation of Northeast Iowa is who manages our lottery dollars. We've gotten a few different grants from them for our Makerspace. Our PTO is really active. A little bit biased because I'm heavily involved in our PTO, but if we say, hey, we need this and tell them why, they're really on it, and I hope that you have organizations like that to support you in your schools as well. Again, donations from families have been a major part of how we build our Makerspace. So now we have some questions for Kim and Bridget. And if any of you in the room, please share some of your responses to these answers as well if you have makerspaces. But Bridget, you want to start? What's your favorite makerspace tool?
First, actually, I think my students' favorite tool is the hot glue gun. Oh my goodness. I cannot tell you how many hot glue sticks we've gone through this year. Like, crazy.
What are they doing with the hot glue gun?
What aren't they? Like, everything that we do, they're like, wait, can we use the hot glue gun? And I'm like, how is that going to? If there's any way they can. But the first, so our 4-6 building, I see the kids in we call it STEAM area. I see them once every 6-day cycle in there. And so I try to, this was something that Anna taught me, try not to always just have it teacher directed, let the kids choose. And so different times they've chose, you could do whatever they wanted to do. And so they want to cut up cardboard boxes and make things and all kinds of, I'm trying to think. And we, with one of the grade levels, I did a challenge from Teachers Pay Teachers, a Minecraft challenge that they were trying to make a creeper trap. They had so much fun with that, and it was so funny because there was a few kids who don't know a lot about Minecraft, which I don't know a ton about, but they were working with a group, and then the rest of the group would be like, well, no, you have to this or that. And it was a really great collaboration, but then they got to use them again, so we were super excited about that.
So I think one of the biggest ahas, Bridget's talking about glue guns, and it makes me think about when I was a first grade teacher. So prior to being an instructional coach, I taught first grade at Keystone Elementary and then Van Horn Elementary that closed. And I think one of the biggest ahas for me in helping to develop that maker mindset was my kids are only going to touch the hot part on the hot glue gun one time, and then they're never going to touch it again. And that's a life skill. And they're either going to learn it at school or they're going to learn it at home. But right now they're not learning it at home, so I'm going to let them know that at school. And guess what? They didn't touch the hot part because I told them not to touch the hot part, because what would happen when you touch the hot part? And if they did, they didn't tell me because they had a fair warning. But I think that that's a really big part of Makerspace and the maker mindset is we cannot constantly be in control of the tools that kids want to use. First graders, 6-year-olds, they're capable of using a low heat hot glue gun. And that's okay. We just need to let them. Because like I said, they're only going to touch that hot spot one time. And then they're going to figure it out. A life skill, like I said, that they're either going to learn at home or at school. But if we don't provide them the opportunity, then are they going to learn it? Probably not.
I'm going to sound like Jonathan Wiley because I think he's one of the smartest men I've ever met. And I'm going to say my favorite tool is probably the camera feature on any device, just because it gets them talking about their learning. It gets them a lot of kindergarten is, problem solving, and explaining that is like pulling teeth. So getting them to talk about that, but it's also getting us, we can push it into home now too. And you go create this at home, share back with me, we'll put it on Seesaw, we'll put it on Instagram, we'll put it on Twitter, whatever our platform is, and get people sharing stuff that they're learning at home, because then they're talking to their parents about it. Their parents are having structured conversations with their kid about, a problem solving cycle. The other piece I would say, Anna talked about, we created the maker cycle and really trying to push that a little bit more this year. We started at Keystone just sending home monthly challenges for families to do together, and they're really simple, they're very open-ended, but it poses a problem for them. They have to do whatever they're going to do to solve that problem, and then if they share it back with us, we throw it out on all of our social media platforms, and that's been really good because then we can put and help me out, who was the speaker this year at the Makerspace?
Chrissy.
Yes, she was wonderful and gave this template for a work mat that has your cycle on it. So I took that, changed it a little bit to make it fit the Keystone, the Benton one, and we're putting that in front of families then at least once a month if we're not doing it more in our classrooms. So those are probably my two favorite.
Any other favorite maker tools? I know we have some maker experts in here. Erin, Amber, any other favorite maker tools that you have?
We use a lot of the lids off like bottles and things like that for wheels and gears. So that's an easy thing, especially in your schools. In the recycle bin, you can have a separate container for that. Popsicle sticks are great.
We have a box for lids on the counter in our school office. You would be shocked how many teachers contribute to that throughout the day.
Yeah. So just any of those things we'd always try to look at, the middle, what are all the things that kids typically throw away? And then where are those things that we can pull out, and how do we help kind of build that leadership within the system so we don't have to, the less we have to buy, the better.
I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna say kids' imagination, right? Because I wholeheartedly agree with what Erin said about digging in your recycle bins. I'm gonna wholeheartedly agree with the idea of being not teacher directed, but allowing the kids to really go with their passions, explore with their interests. Because then you can share it out on social media and share that beautiful story with using the camera, and it's just, as Buddy Berry said during our keynote, the potential of students will never let you down. You are always going to be awed by their ideas, and to allow that imagination to go is the fuel, I think, for a makerspace.
And to piggyback off of that, I think going into one of the biggest mistakes that we made, and I had to correct my colleagues about this comment very much, but so I hope they agree. I think one of the biggest mistakes that we've made in developing or putting physical spaces in our buildings is not talking to teachers enough about giving up control. And I think that all of our maker spaces in our buildings look different physically, but they also look different on what happens in them. And there are some buildings who the teachers in the building think that somebody owns the space. Like they have to come to Bridget maybe and say, can I do this in the maker space with my students? Can I do that? Or Ina, can I do this? Can I have the maker space at this time so I can do X, Y, and Z? And I think Bridget and I have had a lot of conversation about, we don't own the maker space. That is not my space to take care of. Students are required to take care of that, and that we get into that a little bit more with maker mentors, but not giving up control. That's what teachers need to do, is give up control. When we talk about makerspace, like Bridget touched on earlier, there's some really teacher-directed maker challenges, and then there's some really student-directed maker challenges. And I think of it like a sliding scale. We can't be one place on that scale for too long, otherwise kids get stale. So there's a time and a place for a teacher-directed maker challenge, and there is a time and a place for a complete student-directed maker activity as well. So one of the mistakes that we've made is in some of our buildings, there's some people who feel like they own that space, and that when kids enter, I have a lesson and a plan ready to go for them. And that's not feeding our kids, that's not fueling our kids. Now, they are excited about the challenges that they're fed, but that's not what they need all the time. We have to do that in moderation. So like I said, one of the biggest mistakes we made, we're not gonna just talk about what's worked, okay? and having conversations with people about that is hard, because the people who own the space or feel like that's their space, they are really passionate about makerspace. And they're really passionate about bringing opportunities like this to kids in our buildings. But they're not, their mindset isn't quite to the place where they understand that they need to give up some of that control to the kids, and that they don't have to be in charge all of the time. And that's not what success always looks like. So we didn't do enough front loading on that. So when I think about a redo, we would have done more front loading on the mindset and less on the stuff. Anything to add to that, ladies?
So I sat in on a session this morning, and it made me think about, I feel like even myself, I try to let the kids have some control, but she was talking about poetry, and I was like, I would never have picked that as a topic to be doing makerspace stuff with. And so I think, I'm just saying, like, totally, I do that too. But I was like, this is really cool, and I could totally see taking us back and, let's try some poetry.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to integrate Makerspace into things that you already need to accomplish. Tell me about how it fits in your day, because it looks different at both of your centers, and because we don't have extra time with kids.
I can start. So I'm a classroom teacher. I'm with kids all day long. And I was one that right away kind of pushed back with Anna when we were in the pre-planning stage and just said, one of the first questions that's coming to mind is, when am I going to fit this in? I don't have time to fit in what I have to fit in right now. And so if I'm thinking it and I'm on board, somebody that's wanting to not be on board is going to say this right away. So we, tried to problem solve, and we just looked at what are different connections that you are already doing that you can extend a little bit further and go deeper with their learning. So it's not an extra thing if you're just going deeper with your learning. One thing is when you're, I don't know, I should have maybe prepared an idea, talking about fairy tales. You can always do anything with a fairy tale. Are you building structures like the Three Little Pigs did? Why did it work? What are the reinforcements? Talking about that kind of stuff. Yes, it's a story. Yes, I want to talk about the story elements, but let's really dive deeper into why did that work? How are we going to build this structure to make sure the wolf doesn't come in here? And doing that. So that was one thing that if I can put it in a workstation, I'm golden. Then I can do it. I'm just going deeper with what we're already doing. I was not a big fan of going to the space and carving out an extra time in my schedule. I'm just now doing that this year. I am doing a rotation with that. But I was a big fan of just bringing things in that I needed and infusing it into our day. So that's how I found time.
And I think that goes back to, making sure we have a balance of teacher-centered and student-centered or activity around the concept.
So this year, a little bit last year, and then this year, as part of our specials rotations at the 4-6 building, I see all of the classes for about 40 minutes in the Makerspace. And that has been a little bit of a challenge for me. Is like I was kind of hoping that maybe classroom teachers would say, hey, here's some things we want to work on, and I haven't been getting a lot of help with that, but I really have been trying to take time to make connections with my teachers and like find out what they have a better handle on what they're studying and when. So like I found an activity that would use circuits, and I thought, I need to know. I was like, I don't know. I know somebody teaches this, but I don't know who. And so it's made me be better about those planning things, to try and work with the teachers. One of my science teachers who's new, she was like, I said, I don't want to like step on your toes or whatever. And she's like, no, I think the more ways we can incorporate things that the kids are doing, and she said, in like real life stuff. How cool is that? So
one of the things that we did at Atkins last year is the teachers, some third grade teachers, they were really passionate about choice boards. And so we also are a standards-based learning and grading system at our elementary level. So these teachers were really excited about choice board. They wanted to give students choices visually on, I think it was demonstrating something with historical fiction. And so we went through and we identified, a bunch of different choices, and there was a free choice stage and or box that they could check. It kind of reminded me of a bingo card, but then we listed all of the standards that it hits under each of those choices. So they might be math, literacy, science, 21st century skills standards. We listed all of those under those choices that either the teacher predetermined, and then we had a conversation with kids about if they chose a free choice, and we're going to demonstrate the skill in a way that they came up with, what standards those would hit. They had to take this home, have a conversation with their families about it, and then they brought it back to school, and almost every single choice on that choice board involved the Makerspace in some way, shape, or form. And it was getting tools from the Makerspace, it might be getting a supply from the Makerspace, but really what it turned into was the concept that students can demonstrate what they know in a variety of ways, and we can leave that up to them. If we just say, I need you to show me that you know this, they can figure out how to demonstrate that. That doesn't have to be us sitting down with a paper, bedside at night, checking off if they answered A, B, C, or D. There are a lot of different ways for students to demonstrate what they know, and the Makerspace, I think, has helped our teachers and our students realize that, and giving up some of that control of, I'm going to have you fill out this worksheet to show me what you know, or you decide how you're going to show me what you know. Here are some pre-designed choices that are project-based, or here is a choice for you to decide what that looks like. What's your biggest barrier?
For me, is kind of, they've got some big ideas. We all have big ideas. I have big ideas. And trying to zero it into, okay, but what do we want to tackle first? Kind of starting off with the youngest learners. My goal is to get them all to be able to do something and have that solid in the Makerspace. So I want to try and pass on when they go to first grade. I want to own them taking pictures. I want to own them being able to record themselves with the iPad. Just so that's not something they have to teach in first grade. They can just hit the ground running right away. So what we've tried to work a lot with was the green screen to accomplish that. But I was constantly having to either go get the gigantic green screen out of the Makerspace or go to the Makerspace or figure out something with that. So one of our barriers that we busted through this year is I painted a door that was blue. Everything in my room is blue and gold because those are the school colors, and I like things to look nice and be very appealing. And I painted a door bright green, and it is hideous. And I look at it every day that I walk through my room and realize that I have something that's not blue or gold, but it's good for kids. And now we have a spot that we can go, we can do retells, we can go do story elements and, just a conversation and use puppets to tell every day because we have it right there in our space. So I was just trying to think what would make it accessible whenever we want it, so I can own this and pass that on to first grade so they can go deeper next year.
And her nickname is Kimmy Bobcat because we all love Benton, but she loves Benton so much that she has her Kimmy Bobcat nickname. And everything in her room is blue and gold. So when I walked in and saw her door green, I knew that. Oh
I put a yellow curtain over it. It's helped a little bit. That's very great.
I think my biggest barrier is probably, I think in a way, the fact that I do see the kids every cycle. And so, it's a 6-day cycle, so sometimes it's a week and a half before I see the kids if there's days off. It's 40 minutes and I'm really planning and I have this great idea and we're going to do this, and then it's we have an early out Wednesday, and so now I have 20 minutes to see the kids. So sometimes I don't like that because I feel like it would be so much more authentic if I had more time. And I guess my hope is that maybe we can work through that and making things a little more flexible in the future. But it is what it is, and it gets us started. And I do have to say, it has opened up some communication. I've been crazy or excited or I don't know, something, but I asked the kids what they, I was like, how could you change the world? What could you do to my 5th grade kids? And they came up with some cool ideas to help the Children's Hospital. And their teachers are like, well, they could be, if they're going to make posters, because they're collecting fabric to make fleece blankets and pillowcases. They're like, they could make posters when they're in my room. They don't have to wait 6 days to do that. It's like, well, hey, that'd be awesome, because then in 6 days we can move on to the next step. And so that's been, I guess, a good thing from the barrier.
So I think when I think about what Bridget was just talking about, as far as I only see them during this 40 minutes, once every 6 days. I think that that's kind of how we've helped get the maker mindset or maker movement started at Benton, is it kind of looks like a specials period, like gym or music, things like that in some buildings. And like Bridget said, it's helped teachers get in the space and have support in the space and get some buy-in, so that way they can take the mindset and do it outside of the space, because really that's the ultimate goal, is for this to not feel like a special, right? We don't want this to feel like a special. We want it to be a part of how we think, how we act, how we talk, all of those things. So I think right now, one of the barriers that we face is we started with it as in a special like format, where this is a designated time for Makerspace, but moving people out of that comfort zone is where we're at.
I think a huge barrier goes back to giving up that control. It is hard. It's something that needs to be definitely preloaded, revisited all the time, because I struggle with that, and I think I'm bought in, you know, but that's something that's serious, so it's real.
Is anyone else feeling brave enough to share any barriers that they're encountering right now in their makerspaces?
Well, I'm just curious, so when you have all of those students, do you try to finish the project that day, or how do you store? If you've got that many kids, how do you store them?
I try not to have too many huge projects going on at once. So a little backstory. I actually this is my 3rd year at Benton. I was somewhere else teaching tag before that, and I got hired, and I got an email from this Anna, and she was like, so we're going to start this makerspace, and we're wondering if you want to be a part of this. And I was like, I didn't really know what I was getting into, but I said sure. And meanwhile, I also had a baby that May, and so over the summer I didn't do a lot of school stuff. And so before I actually ever got to Norway, the principal decided that she was going to move the library to a classroom and make the library into our makerspace. And so that first year I was there, the makerspace started out very bare and was kind of built along the way that year. And like at the time I was really upset. I was like, wow, I can't believe they did that without even talking to me. So I do have a big space, which helps. And then I also try to like have the kids all their stuff in a box or something. So I have like all these paper boxes that like they label with their groups. So like right now I'm doing a project. It's a challenge that I found online, an engineering challenge, and so I have the kids in groups and they have all their stuff in a box, and then so when they come in, like when they come in with the sub today, they'll just go to the shelf, get their box, and continue on. And then other challenges that I have done, I have shortened so that we have time to complete the challenge and have some reflection at the end, because I don't see them for 6 more days. I don't want to like finish this and then next week be like, well, do you remember last week when we... So sometimes I choose to shorten something so we have that time.
We have a lot of open shelving in some of our maker spaces as well, and I think that that is usually the best option if our space allows for it. Because a lot of times what we would do is we'd have students put it on open shelving and then put work in progress or describe their project in whatever language that they choose. Or sometimes it would be putting up like a sheet that shows what their plan is and what their goal is next to their project, so that way anyone who comes in the makerspace can see what does this work in progress look like, and it's helpful for kids to generate new ideas.
But we also built into our PBIS expectations, like this shelf will house it for 2 weeks, and then it's either going to be taken apart, taken home, whatever happens to those projects is behind closed doors type thing after hours. So that was something that we encountered, but we literally, every space possible that you can have something drying, we'll have things drying. Top of lockers, just randomly sitting around the building, and kids have been really good about just leaving it be because they're proud of their makerspace, they're proud of their creations.
And we even have a table in our hallway, like in our front entrance, that everybody walks by, and kids are really good about knowing what pieces on that table that they can put their hands on and what they need to kind of look with their eyes and not with their hands, depending on the project. But it is the hallway that is, we have 2 hallways in our building.
It's a big building.
And it is used more than any others, and every kid walks through it multiple times a day, and they are really proud to showcase their work for everyone to see. Any other barriers?
I would say, so probably, it's been a little over a year ago, we set up a Makerspace in our library. And we had students, our older students were 6th graders, and they actually had designed it and you know, set it up and everything. And at first it seemed to be going pretty well. And like you said about owning it, so since my students I was the owner all of a sudden, I was like, no, I'm not the owner, right? Everyone can use it. But I guess we're struggling with how much structure do you give them when they're in there? Because I'm always like, it's not teacher directed and all of this. Then I have some people who are like, well, it looks like just a play area to me. And we don't, like you were saying about, or her question about how long do these projects go on? It's hard, it's hard to know, here, if we're done today, are we done? Are we bringing this project on multiple, class period? It's just hard to know how much structure to give them, I guess.
And I think part of that goes back to like, do we have to know? Does it have to be black and white? Does it have to be like this project's going to last for this many minutes and this many days? I don't believe that we have to know the answers to that all the time. I think that there's definitely a time and place for it, and that's why we go back to that sliding scale. Yeah, if we're always student directed and they're never given any teacher directed challenge, then I think that they'll get stale. And someone can push back on that, but I think that they'll get stale. I think that they'll get stale, or we won't be accomplishing what we're setting out to accomplish if we're constantly in that teacher directed. And I think that going back to the mindset shift, we have to do everything in our power as believers in the Maker movement to let people see that it's not just a space where we go and play. And I think it goes back to, too, even if we are going in there and playing, there is so much learning that happens through play. I get that we have all of these tools and we have the FAST assessment. I'm the Fast Bridge Queen in my district. Not a title that I love having, but it is what rules my day, is whether or not Fast Bridge is working or a teacher is lost in it. But at the end of the day, we have to put those things behind us and realize that really purposeful high levels of learning happen through play. And they happen through making too. And so I think it goes back to how are we, what I hear you saying is some of the same mind shift barriers that we are working on. Giving up control and being okay not seeing things in black and white all the time. But not every challenge has to be student-centered. Not every challenge has to be teacher-centered. Not every challenge has to be defined by minutes and days. And I think that the sooner we come to terms with that, the better off everybody's going to be.
But I think you got to wrap your head around a management system too, especially if you're not the owner, but you are the owner of the space. And I think a good resource to reach out for is your art teachers, because this is their world they live in all the time. They're constantly having projects that they have to shut down and then reopen, and they're on that spectrum all the time of teacher directed to free creation, whatever. And maybe I'm just saying this because my husband's an art teacher, but he's just looking at me like, are you kidding? That's hard for you? That's my world. So I think if we reach out to those type of people, what's their management style like? Can we mimic parts of that to make it work in? Because I think you do have to have some type of management style so you don't go crazy.
And it doesn't always look the same for every class. I did a zipline challenge that was part of our 88 as a Think, Make, Innovate thing. And I did it with 5 classes. And 4 of them, I couldn't pull them away from it to end it. So we ended up keeping everything and coming back to it the next week because it mattered to them. They wanted, and what was really exciting for me was watching the classroom teachers look at like how successful some of our kids who have the heaviest IEPs did on this challenge, how hard they worked and how well they did, because those kids don't necessarily always see a lot of success in their classrooms. So sometimes I think that, you know, like to me, that's also really important about what they're doing, so.
But to hit on one more part of your question, like I feel like teachers looked at me like I own the Makerspace, and I've started just answering their questions with questions. Like, oh, can I have a Makerspace today? I don't know, can you? And that's not to put anybody down, but I don't know, can you? I don't, that's not my space, it's our space. So how can you communicate with people that you need the green screen today? We only have one green screen. So how are we gonna solve that problem? And I don't own the space, so can you send out an email and just let everybody know that you're gonna have the green screen in your space today? You bet you can. So putting it back on them has helped with that.